Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie and today we are doing an update to my tarot deck collection video. We do this every year around this time where I basically walk you through every single tarot deck that I own that's currently in my collection. I show you a lot of the cards and talk about the deck and why I like it, why it's in my collection, my experience, all of that good stuff. I've recently done the same but for my oracle decks, and I'll leave a link to that video below if you'd like to see that. So in no particular order, let's get right in. So the first deck we're going to have a look at is actually, I think, one of the prettiest decks I own. It's the Textured Tarot by Lisa McLaughlin. I have Lisa McLaughlin's oracle decks. Well, I still have one of them. I've had all three previously, but as we know, I've done a bit of a culling of my collection this year. But anyway, the point is that I really like her artwork, and I knew that I wanted this deck as soon as I heard it announced. Largely, I mean, I just really like her artwork and the colors and everything that she's used. But also beyond that, I connected so much with her life design cards that I knew that this deck was worth me giving a go. And it's really lovely. I've had a lot of fun with this one. Like I said, I do think it's one of the prettiest tarot decks I own. Just the lightness of it all. And it is kind of collagey, some digital work. And I think Textured Tarot really is the perfect title because there are all these layers. And it's not just collage in the sense of, you know, pictures cut out of a magazine. There's like fabric and literally textures all throughout this deck, which I just think it's such an interesting way to put it all together, and it's been done really beautifully. Number 2 is the World Spirit Tarot. Now I do have the old Llewellyn edition, which is why I have this backing, but this deck is still available. It's been reprinted independently, which is great, I think, because I do think it's an old favorite of mine. It's a deck that I've used probably more than most other tarot decks in my collection. I went a little shaky on it this year, a little overzealous in my desire to cut down my collection, and nearly got rid of this one, but Tom Benjamin reminded me of why this is such a beautiful, special deck. Like, it really is just a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but it's beautiful. I love the colors. I just love the whole, I don't know, I just feel good when I work with this deck and look at it. I just think it's a really beautiful, special deck. And actually the little white book, the guidebook that comes with it, is a really solid one too, considering its size and everything. I think this is a great deck for people who are still learning, but also there's, you know, kind of that added personality and symbolism in here for those of us who, you know, are quite familiar with the cards. I just think the execution of this deck is really great, and as we can see here, the court cards have been renamed, which I think is really cool. Definitely kind of helps us get to the meaning behind the card, I think, a lot easier than just like King and Queen can, and not to mention that it's a little bit more open in terms of like the hierarchy and genders of those roles, which is a positive in my view. Next up is another deck that I have the independent version of but has been reprinted as a mass-produced deck, is the Fountain Tarot. And this is another one of those decks that is just stunning in my view. It's very, very light. I feel like a lot of that was done in the editing actually, where the kind of brightness was really turned up on the artwork. And it certainly gives us this kind of really open, airy, spacious feel. It's a very contemporary deck with the characters in here were painted from models, so they're very much real people this death card, as I've always thought was really quite interesting. It kind of reminds me of, you know, back in the day when you were on the internet and you were waiting for a file to load and it kind of go like row by row. That's what that reminds me of. Like it got stuck at 2/3 of the way through. But some of this artwork is just absolutely like stunning. I mean, all of it's beautiful, but some of them are just, yeah, really, really striking. And I like that this deck, it's definitely, again, another Rider-Waite-Smith base deck. Most of my decks are. I love the Rider-Waite-Smith. But it just feels like, I don't know, the meaning's kind of been broken down to a point where we're not relying on ancient esoteric symbols that we kind of have to know the language of before we can read. I also love how there's so much movement in these cards. That's a great example. The cards just feel like there's, yeah, a lot of light, a lot of air, a lot of movement. And so I know some people experience this deck as quite cold. I don't. Instead, I would describe it more as neutral. And now for the biggest tarot cards that I own, it's the Next World. These cards are massive, but I'm really glad that they are as big as they are because the artwork is really detailed. There's a lot going on. And I've done a review of this deck, or did I do a first impressions? I can't remember. I've spoken about this deck a lot anyway, and how I think it's absolutely incredible. It very quickly became one of my favorite decks of all time. Just looking at it now, because of the experiences I've had with it, makes me really quite emotional. This is absolutely a contemporary deck, really in celebration of the diversity of humanity is, I suppose, what it's tried to capture, and I think it's done it pretty successfully. The guidebook is amazing, and the way that the meanings of the cards are kind of framed, I think it's really, just really radical. I love it. This is probably my favorite Six of Pentacles ever. I've spoken a lot about how I struggle with the Six of Pentacles and the way that it's visually portrayed but then spoken about. Whereas I love the Six of Pentacles in this deck. I love this. Oh, there's so many just incredibly gorgeous. This Ten of Cups. Oh. I just think there's a playfulness to this deck, but then like just a realness to it. And I do love, like I said, the larger cards, because I feel like with all of this detail going on, I feel like in a smaller card, to me at least with my eyesight, I feel like the cards could have just ended up looking like messy. But instead we have these big cards with this white border, which is exactly what I think it needed, at least for me. And I've experienced this deck as beautifully loving, as radically self-loving or encouraging of that. I actually found it to be a lot kinder than I think that I was expecting. A lot gentler with me in a way, but it's still not, no cotton wool at all, but I don't know, just validating and affirming. Switching gears entirely, we have the Guardian Angel Tarot cards by the one and only Doreen Virtue. I did a whole video on these cards when I first got them, and I know a lot of people were surprised when I did get them, and I don't blame you. I'm honestly a little surprised too. But I just think there's something really sweet about these cards. And as someone who grew up in a fairly lax Catholic family, especially that my great-grandmother was big into Mary and Jesus, and church every Sunday, and spent her whole life adopting kids and volunteering at St Benny's. I don't know, there's something about this that reminds me of her and that world, I suppose. And I actually think that this is much more of a tarot deck than people would like to give it credit for. I mean, the suits are here, the system's here, even the meanings of the cards, you know, without saying the names of the cards, they're pretty damn close to what we would come to a core meaning of those cards. I just think there's something a little bit over the top about this whole thing, like the doilies and all of it. It's a bit much, but that's also kind of why I like it so much. It's not a deck I use all the time, but sometimes this is like the only deck I want to use. And it's just perfect for those moments of, I don't know, whatever those moments are. I don't know. I'm a big fan of this deck. And I mean, like, I don't take it too seriously. I don't take myself too seriously. I don't take many things too seriously. But I do feel like this deck has it has stolen a little piece of my heart. I can't deny that. Next is the newest deck in my collection. It's the Modern Witch Tarot. This is a deck I bought more or less on a whim, and as you can see, I haven't used or shuffled it yet. It's a really cute deck. It is basically a Rider-Waite Smith clone, but like modern, and a lot more women than our good old Rider-Waite Smith. But I think it's quite fun. Gotta love a motorcycle. Yeah, I don't really know what to make of it yet, because like I said, I haven't used it. I just got it, as I said, a bit of a whim. And I have had, I think it's a Magician came as like an extra card when I bought the Lunar Soul. And I've been using that as a bookmark for ages. And I really, really love that card. It's the card on the front here. And then the other card that kind of really did it for me, I think came as an extra card here. Yeah, was the Ten of Swords. This just genuinely made me laugh out loud the first time I saw it. So, I mean, I don't really know that I needed another Rider-Waite Smith clone, but I don't know. If you're going to have a Rider-Waite Smith clone, at least have a fun one, right? Next is a deck that I've had for a really long time, and it is the Circo Tarot. This has been, again, one of my more used decks over the years. I especially found I used this a lot when I was doing client readings. I just found this such an easy deck to read when I was reading for others. And of course, people seem to really like it too, because I mean, who can blame them? It's beautiful. I don't remember exactly which edition I have, because I know there's been many, but I do know that I backed this on Kickstarter. I think it was, if not my first, it was one of my first Kickstarter campaigns that I backed. And I just think it's a wonderful deck. It's quite simple, quite Rider-Waite Smith, but just really, really fun, colourful, vibrant art with these kind of quirky characters with like funny noses, and I love this Eight of Pentacles. I just think it's one of those decks that's just so easy to read. I love the Six of Pentacles. This almost looks creepy. But they're really cute. I think the colours is really what drew me into this deck originally. Just think they're really pretty. And every time I talk about this deck, I have to talk about my favourite card, which is the Page of Cups. It's my favourite Page of Cups in any deck. I wonder if we'll come to it. Oh, look at that star. Isn't that beautiful? High Priestess is gorgeous too. I'm going to have to go through and find this Page of Cups for you, because I haven't spoken about this deck for a little while on my channel and I just feel like you need to see it. Here we go. Oh my god. I love it. I love it so much. I just think this is such a playful, fun little deck, and this kind of just epitomizes that for me. Oh, it's flawless. Well, we've spoken about one of my most used decks of all time. Now let's have a look at one of my least used. It's the Little Monsters Tarot. This is one of the cutest little decks, and I've had it for quite a while now, and I love the artwork. I think it's amazing, and yet for some strange reason that I just can't quite put my finger on, I don't really use it. I've used it a handful of times and had great readings with it, but literally I could probably count those readings on my fingers. And I don't know what it is that I don't spend more time with this deck, and every time like I do a clear out of my collection, this is one of those decks that I'm like, oh, I should probably just get rid of it. I don't use it enough to justify keeping it, but then I never can because it's just, oh, it's so cute. It reminds me of Studio Ghibli, or Ghibli, however people say it differently, and I've been corrected when I've said like either way. I love this. I love this Two of Coins. Like this reminds me of like a creepy Pikachu. It's just beautiful. Like for how simple they are, there's also just a lot of detail. And they're just gorgeous, and all these characters feel really distinct. Like they have proper personalities here. And this feels like a really unique sort of world. I could talk it up all day, and yet I don't know why I don't use it more. Wasn't that beautiful? It's gorgeous. I will say I really like the little white book. I actually have used the guidebook more than I've used the deck, which is crazy. Look at that. But it is true. The guidebook's great. So cool. Now for another Little Monsters, and this is the Little Monster Tarot as well, but it's kind of more well known as the Mons Tarot, although that makes me think of something other than monsters, to be honest, by Joanna Nelson. This backing is so cute. This is one of my favorite decks, one of my most used decks. It was in my top rankings for 2019, and I just adore it. I think it's so cute, so sweet, and I've done a really extensive review on this one, which I'll leave a link to if you want to. I think I went through all the cards, if not most of them, and I spoke about it a lot in detail about my experience of it, why I enjoy it so much. I just think it's the sweetest little thing. And of course, as I say with so many of the decks that I love the colours. Colours is a big thing for me, and clearly, I don't know, I like pretty colours and colourful colours, and I just think these are the cutest things. And this kind of reminds me of like the Golden Snitch, but a goblet, which I'm not mad about. And the little sleepy moon. So basically a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, just done adorable. And as I've said before, I didn't think I needed another Rider-Waite-Smith clone, but here we are. It's just the cutest little thing. And honestly, it's one of my most reliable readers. It's just a deck that, I don't know, it's just a good, solid reading deck for me, as well as being ridiculously cute. That has to be the cutest Hierophant you've ever seen. Like, are you kidding me? Oh. I love that Eight of Pentacles too. Little throwbacks here and there to the Rider-Waite-Smith symbolism. Another deck that was on the top of my list for 2019 was the Tarot Mucha, actually. Another very close Rider-Waite-Smith clone. Just done in this really kind of cool Art Nouveau style with a creepy as hell Judgment. I just think this is a really solid reader. Especially when I was reading for others, again, it was just a go-to. It was just such a staple. Like, I just knew what I was going to get. The colours are really pretty, really romantic in a lot of ways. And I really like the borders and how they kind of add to the feelings of the cards associated with the elements. We don't have words on these cards, we have symbols instead. So we have like the number 3 and a cup for the 3 of Cups. And I know some people find that a bit tricky with the Roman numerals, or also with the courts. Like, for example, we have different crowns that all symbolize what this card is. So that's like the Queen's crown and then of Swords. And this is the Knight. So we have a horse. So it's kind of got like its own little symbol thing going on. But I mean, because this is so close to the Rider-Waite-Smith, it's really, even if you have trouble with the symbols, which I don't think you would if you play around with the cards for a little bit, even if you do, they're really quite self-explanatory. You can kind of catch on pretty quickly with which card is which. Next is a deck that I sometimes call my soul deck, and other times I talk about how I don't believe in soul decks. Sorry about that. This is a really special deck to me. The Gill Tarot is one that I don't know why I connect to it so strongly. And I have had the most incredible readings with it. It came to me in such an incredible way. Like, everything about my experience of this deck has been difficult to explain. And I mean, if I just think about it, I don't know that I particularly love the look of this deck all the time. But for some reason it just clicks with me, and I get the most incredible readings with it. Oops. I know that there's such a rich system of symbolism to this deck, but I have just used it very, very intuitively, and that was by choice, because this deck does feel like it fits a piece of my heart and my soul that I don't always have words for. And so I kind of learnt to stop trying, to stop overthinking it and just let myself experience this deck. Because we do have a really unique, unusual sort of a relationship that I'm just really happy to have. Whatever label we end up putting on it. I love that Empress, isn't she gorgeous? One of the first cards I drew from this deck. Still love it. I'm so glad this deck is back in the world, although I wasn't at first, and I did a whole video of that. My reaction to my favourite deck coming back into print. So yeah, I've been on a journey with this deck. I love this Four of Swords. Love it. I just think it's just wonderful, okay? Another deck that is kind of newer to me, this time around anyway, is the Mesquite Tarot. This one is still in order, although we're apparently going backwards, because it only arrived fairly recently and I haven't used it yet. This is a deck I had a while ago, and I spoke a lot about really struggling to read it. Like, I can look at this card and tell you what the meaning is, but I had trouble kind of weaving cards together in a reading. I had trouble hearing its voice, basically. And I tried and tried and tried, and eventually I gave up. But then I saw this come up secondhand not too long ago, and I jumped on it. Yes, because I've always loved the look of this deck, and I love the court cards and the names that they've been given. But more than that, really, if I'm honest, one of the main reasons I missed this deck was because of how much I like the guidebook. I think this is one of the best guidebooks I've read, and I miss having it around. So yes, I want to give this deck another go because I genuinely think it's just beautiful. I love the colors. I love the simplicity of these cards. How they're kind of like non-scenic illustrated pips. I love the smaller size. There's so much I love about this in theory. I just need to get it to read for me, really. It's all that I need. But I am, in the meantime, just quite happy to have the guidebook back. And that was my main motivation for buying the deck again. Next up, we have the one and only Sasuraibito Tarot. This deck kind of took everyone by storm, didn't it, when it came out? Was it in 2018? And I was reluctantly won over. I didn't really get the hype behind this deck, and I ended up getting it more out of curiosity than anything else. And then when I did, I just fell so hard in love with it. I couldn't put it down. It was the only deck I wanted to use, and I wanted to do like multiple readings a day just so that I could use it. I really like the guidebook. I love the personal nature of the meanings that are provided in the guidebook, but just also how intimate and personal the deck itself feels. And again, I did a really thorough review of this one. And I just raved on and on and on about it for like 15 minutes. Because I genuinely feel like it's one of the most accessible decks in terms of how easy it is to look at these cards and just know what the meaning is. I think they're very, very evocative through color, through body language, through facial expressions. It just feels really alive in that way. I love this. I just think it's really, at least in my view, I think it's just one of the most successful decks in terms of a beautiful deck that is also really, really readable. This is my good old Stella's Tarot. Now this I have trimmed. It was a standard size tarot deck once upon a time with very big borders. So I've trimmed it right down and I love it. It was one of my, I don't know, I feel like this is one of my like cornerstone decks. It's one that I got like a perfect time and that I learnt so much with, and I really feel like I grew as a reader a lot working with this deck. So it has a special place in my heart because of that alone. But then also I just think it's so gorgeous. As always, I love the colors. But I just love this art style. I think it's so interesting. And the characters are all kind of, I don't know, it's just really, it's quirky and sometimes a little unsettling, but just, I don't know, I just think it's so wonderful. I love just like kind of the layers to the cards. Some of them kind of more look like they're on a stage. I don't know, there's something about this deck that I just think it has so much personality. Like these cat heads. It's just a bit weird, but only just. Like if you just kind of flicked through this deck, you probably wouldn't think it weird at all. But then you have a bit more of a look and, oh right, there's someone with a cat for a head. Or just how like small the heads are. It's just a bit weird, just a tiny bit weird. Just weird enough. Oh, I love this devil card. One of my favorite devils. Just like that control. Oh. It's like he doesn't even have to try to be scary. I love this. Next is the Liminal Tarot. This was kind of like my pride and joy at one point. I have number 111, 111 of 200 limited copies. It was the first kind of like big investment in a tarot deck I made. I saved up, ordered it from the creator while it was still in print. And I used it so much. I was so in love with this deck, and I still do really love it. I just don't use it anymore. Although I have to admit, it smells so good. Every time I open that tin, I'm like, oh, damn, that's a good smelling deck. It's beautiful. I think it's one of the most beautiful decks I own. I just really, really like this artwork. I love the colors. I love the movement and the light. I just think it's gorgeous. This card replaces the world. 10 of discs. It's just lovely. I love the 7 of cups. Like, I love everything about this deck. I just don't really use it as much as I used to. I love this Hierophant card. Big old tree, and he does have a face there. Might be hard to see from a distance, I'm not sure. It's very kind of classic Rider-Waite Smith with a few adjustments. Some of my favourites are the Six of Pentacles. It's one of my favourite Six of Pentacles. I love that our Empress has a dragon and a squirrel. We're back with another of my most used decks and another from my top decks of 2019. This is the Minute Tarot. And oh gosh, how many readings I've done with this deck. It's partly because the size of it makes it so easy to do a reading, especially if you're going to pull, you know, 6 or more cards. You don't need a lot of space because it is a smaller size deck. But also just like the playfulness of it, the colors, and how quick and easy the readings flow. All of that just means that it's a deck that I just go to very often. Because, you know, I'm only human. And we tend to go the quick and easy route a lot of the time. And for me, that is this deck in a lot of ways. I do also just think it's really fun and pretty, and I'm just really glad to have it. I love everything about this deck. I'll explain briefly for those of you who haven't seen it before. Basically, the artist was having some trouble finishing off another project. And so as a way to get her out of her own slump, she gave herself 5 minutes to create each card. So the artwork for each card was done in a 5-minute time limit. And so they're very rushed. And that, like, even these borders were all done, like all the borders are individual to the cards. Everything about the card was done in 5 minutes. And so that just kind of really snappy process, I think, just comes through in how the deck reads, at least for me. I love that playfulness of it. Next up we have the Sakki Tarot, which is a new addition for me this year, but I've already spent quite a lot of time with it. It very quickly became a deck that I just went to, that I found really super easy to read with, that I had a lot of fun reading with. I think it's really fun. It's really quite Rider-Waite Smith. It's just got this kind of like, I don't know, like surreal, slightly dark twist on it. And yet it's so colourful. And I think that pairing is kind of why I like it so much. This was one of my most used decks of the year, even though I only got it in the second half of the year. I think that just speaks to how much I used it. And I think even just the size of these cards probably contributes to that. I mean, look at this, like, headless figure. I love it. Like, it's just a really nice deck to hold in your hands and shuffle, which I think probably contributes to why I reach for it so often. It's so vibrant. I love it. Like, very much just our classic 9 of rods, or wands, except no head. I don't know, it just kind of makes me giggle, makes me laugh, and that's basically my favourite thing to do. Play with cards and laugh. There is, like, it feels like there's a lot going on in the cards. But it never gets to the point where I can't, like, make out what the image is trying to portray, if that makes sense. It's just really colourful, really fun. And yeah, definitely a deck I look forward to spending more time with. As I said, I'm only kind of in the early throes of a relationship, but so far so good. At the same time as I got the Sakki, I also got the Tarot de St Croix. This is another deck that I have had before, but ended up trading on, primarily because of the orange. But I really wanted to give the deck another go, and so I managed to get another copy, purchased at the same time as the Sakki. And the orange definitely doesn't have that same really negative impact on me as it did the first time round, but I haven't used it really much yet. I have done maybe 2 or 3 readings and they were really good, but then I was just having too much fun with the Sakki, so this is a deck I really hope to spend a lot more time with in 2020. And I'm just really happy that, like, the orange doesn't, I know it sounds like a harsh word, but I really felt like repulsed and agitated by the bright orange the first time round when I first had it. It was like a physical response to the deck. It was awful because I wanted to love it and I just couldn't quite bring myself to. Whereas I'm not having that response to this orange at all anymore. So that's really promising to me. And I'm looking forward to getting to know it a lot more. Because, I mean, clearly you can see already that there's a lot going on in this deck. It's really, I mean, it still sticks with our, like, fairly comfortably within what we know, but it definitely has its own spin on it. I love this 6 of Cups. Oh, love it. I'm not sure where we got cut off there, but we're going to move on to the next deck. This is the Fantastic Menagerie. This, if you've been following my channel for like the last 3 years, or you've seen me any time in the last 3 years, you'll probably know that this deck is one of my all-time favorite decks. This Hierophant, I love this Hierophant card. This is one of those decks that I was not expecting to like, let alone love. And love is, I truly adore this deck. It is one of my most used decks of the last however many years that I've owned it. It's still a deck that I have so much fun with. It's still a deck that every time I look at the cards, I find something new. It has so much personality. It's so playful and alive and just makes me like cackle and laugh out loud with the readings that I get. And yes, like, it's Rider-Waite Smith based in terms of the meanings, but there's so much going on with the characters in these cards that I feel like the cards really do speak. They have a voice of their own. And I just think there's something so special about this deck. I just adore it. But yeah, I know I've spoken about this deck so much over the years, so I'll try not to talk about too much because I know it's no longer available. But it's probably the deck that I cherish the most in that sense, that I know it's hard to get, and yet it is, like, it has been and continues to be like my top 3 favorite tarot decks, most used tarot decks since I got it. So it's not just a nice collector item for me. It genuinely is one of those decks that I would go out of my way to replace if anything were to happen. Next up we have another deck that is still in order because I have yet to use it, and we're going backwards. This is the Gaian Tarot, and it's the Llewellyn edition. I won't talk too much about this because, as I said, I haven't used it. I have had it for a little while now though, and I don't know what it is that's stopping me from just kind of diving in. But to be fair, I haven't been using tarot a huge amount anyway lately, I do really feel like I need to make a conscientious effort to kind of just like give my practice a kickstart. But this deck is beautiful, and it kind of has a bit of a cult following. Like, the people who love it adore it. Oh, this is a bit intense right now. If you know anything about the state of Australia right now. It's a really interesting deck in that it's not new, but it kind of has hung around in the minds of tarot readers. It's been appreciated by a lot of people for a long time. And it's beautiful. It is a lot more beautiful in real life than I was expecting it to be. It's a lot softer and prettier than I thought it was going to be, which was a wonderful surprise. Next is a deck that really surprised me. It's the Dark Days Tarot. This is a deck that I'd seen online plenty over the years and just kind of, I don't know, not dismissed, but just, I thought it was pretty, I appreciated it, but just kind of figured it wasn't for me. Until one day I saw it in a bookshop and got to actually play around with it in my hands. And I fell in love. And then I picked up a secondhand copy for myself. And this has probably been one of the most important decks for me this year. This was definitely a deck I used a lot in 2019. It helped me a lot. It taught me a lot. It gave me some incredibly synchronistic, like, fortune-telling sort of readings, which was just really cool and fun. And then it's just also really pretty. I really, really like this deck. And it's certainly been one of my most used of the year. Probably the top 3, I think. I don't know, it's hard to say, but it is. It's just a beautiful deck. I would love for them to come out with an edition where all the cards are black on white, so like the Major Arcana are, just because I can see that a little better. But I'm not mad at this situation. I do think it's just beautiful the way it is. And I love like the unique sort of square size of it. I did also think it was going to be a lot bigger than it is. I like that it's smaller. I like that the images are at once so simple and really quite detailed. I don't know, I just think it's beautiful. I love the kind of recurring moon motifs and imagery throughout. It's just been such a readable deck for me, and I think that's the key. Just pull out some cards and I get a really clear message that's helpful, that's insightful, that's directive, that's thought-provoking, all of the things. Oh, I love this card. Just a really great deck. Another of my favorite decks this year was the Idiosyncradeck Tarot, Idiosyncradeck, however you want to say it. I know everybody says it differently. This was given to me by Tracy from Temperance Tarot, or is she becoming Temperance now? I can't remember. Which was ridiculously generous. And it just became like a deck. It found its way into my heart so quickly that I was like crying in my first impressions. It was ridiculous. And for such a simple, almost childlike, colourful like deck, it doesn't look like the sort of deck that would make you cry. And yet, here we are. It makes me cry regularly. Which seems ridiculous, but I promise it's true. It's just a wonderful deck. It's really fun to read with. I just love it. I won't talk about it too much because I know I've spoken about it a lot and it's a very hard deck to come by. But it's wonderful. It's just an absolute dream come true. And I just love reading with it. Like the simplicity of that and how easy it is to get that message from just such a simple image. I don't know, I just think it's really special. I just love it. Then I'm going to talk quickly about 3 decks in one. They're kind of like my Rider-Waite-Smith decks. I have I have 3, although I suppose this isn't exactly a Rider-Waite Smith. This is, I think it's the Universal Tarot. I always forget, but basically it's like a really close Rider-Waite Smith clone by Lo Scarabeo that I've trimmed and edged. And this is basically my pocket deck, the deck that I put in my bag, that I throw around, that I don't care if it gets wet at a bar table or anything else. So that is one of my Rider-Waite Smiths. This one is my Pamela Colman Smith commemorative set edition that I thought I was going to get rid of, but then kind of just haven't actually done. And then this is my, what they call like a purple box or UK edition, printed in the 90s. It's my favorite of the Rider-Waite Smith editions. I've done videos on all of this stuff before. These ones aren't too hard to find. Don't spend a lot of money on them, but I think if you can get them, they're the best value for money if you want like a nicer Rider-Waite Smith. Next we have the Dreams of Gaia by Raven Phelan, and I've spoken about this deck before. I did a whole video, I think it was like my Diary of a Tarot Reader series, about this deck and how I developed a very unlikely relationship with this deck, because it's not a deck that I would have thought I would have liked. It's not a deck that I was really excited to get. It's not a deck where the artwork, I mean, I can appreciate that this is incredible, but it's not the artwork that I normally go for, if that makes sense. And yet I got it out of curiosity and it blew me away. So I've been on a bit of a journey with this deck, and I have realized that this is a deck that has very kind of short, fiery bursts with me during particular times of the year. And we're nearing that now. So I'm sure this will probably be coming out again for me soon. And then it will go away and I won't touch it for 10 months. It's just one of those decks for me, and I've just had to accept that. I think it's incredible though. It's really unique with the changes that Raven Phelan's made to the system. Even just unique in this art style. It's incredibly rich and detailed. It's a really interesting deck. I love these dragons for the aces, like the primal energy. I think it's really cool. Really cool. And last but not least is my newest deck, This Might Hurt Tarot. This one is still in order, as you can see, because I literally just took it out of the post a couple of days ago and haven't gotten around to using it. And it is beautiful. I bought this, it went straight from seeing it on a Tom Benjamin video to cart, purchase, sold, all of the things like in 10 minutes. It's gorgeous. I'd kind of seen it around on Instagram but not paid too much attention because, you know, I'm not really shopping for tarot at the moment. But when I watched Tom's video and kind of just actually took the time to look at some of these cards, I didn't even get like a third of the way in before I was purchasing the deck. It's beautiful. It's just gorgeous. It really is. But as I said, it's very new to me, so I don't have a lot to say about it. Other than that, I love the colors and the imagery. I cannot wait to work with this deck. I think it's the one I'm probably most excited about. I mean, to be fair, it's the newest, so you'd hope I'd be excited. But it is just, it's gorgeous. A great way to end 2019. So those are all of my tarot decks. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. As always, a big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on my Patreon and Discord. You guys are the best, and thank you so much for just making this a great year, especially the last few months, us being together over on the Discord and stuff. It's just been really great. You've definitely made 2019 a good year for me. Of course, a big extra special thank you to the stars of the show, Tracy Timmerman, Laurie and Lynette Brown. But as always, I really appreciate everyone over on the Patreon. And if you are curious about what happens on over there, I'll leave a link in the description box below. But that is all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon. So much love. Bye.